Hello guys, I'm Shantanu and I have completed BTech with Computer Sciences and Engineering. Presently, I am working as a banking professional and at the same time I am preparing for the UPSC Civil Services exam. So here I am going to share my good practices with you guys. Now, regarding UPSC, you will have lots of motivation, suggestion, meets and good advices available over the internet. So I am not going to overburden you with those kind of stuffs. Rather, I am going to concentrate on the very basic. To read the NCERT will build the pillar of success when it comes to UPSC. So let's move on to the very beginning, that the class 6 history book. The title suggests our pasts. Now remember the plural form pasts, which is also means explained in this particular first chapter. So here I'm not going to dictate you, like whatever is written on the book, let them written on it. I'm going to share my own pattern of studying it and some question making and also some key ideas and keywords. So like all the other important NCERT books, it start with a question from a little child, then there is a philosophy, and then there is the actual way of studying things. Like you make questions from the fact and then you give some logical answers to it. So if we move on to the philosophy, yesterday you could listen to the radio, watch television and read a newspaper. For the last year you need to rely on memory, but what about long ago? So one thing is very important, it's records. So whenever you want to know something, you need to know the records of particular time. Okay, so record keeping is very important because it will give you the idea of the past. So history is mostly based on this records and record keeping. So then they have moved on, like some important question, what can we know about the past, about the livelihood of the people, the different places like the Narmada river valley, the northwest the Suleiman and the Kirthar range, the northeast Garo hills and the Ganga river system, the Indus river system, everything, the people traveling, people getting settled down, people forming villages, cities and some archaeological sources to guide to their livelihood pattern. So we will do all these things through my own note making, and at the same time we will try to give answers to the questions, not at the level of class 6 but rather we will mix things up with our modern idea and present day idea. So okay, let's go to my note. Here is a map of India which is also provided in the book. So here we can find that there are lots of river systems. So rivers are very important regarding the civilization, because in this particular chart we find that river gives us water, which is an important resource for our life. A river gives the navigation facility through which we can travel, we can use it as a medium of transport, and also river gives the fertility to the river valleys, which gives us the opportunity to grow crops. So around 8,000 years ago the first instance of civilization was found in this Indus Valley river system. So what did the people do? They used to grow crops like wheats and barley, they used to rear goat, sheep and cattle, and they used to form the villages. So a keyword we can find already here is a sense of settlement. People are now transforming their livelihood from earlier they were hunters, then they become gatherers, and right now they are there is a sense of settlement. Another important thing is that the society, regarding the most informal things like the resource development, women and men both used to participate, so there was less amount of gender gap. Next, if we move on to the same region, after 4700 years ago there was the urbanization, the ancient urbanization rather. So these were in the bank of river Indus, which later move on to the mainland India, that is the river Ganga valley. Now, earlier people used to move from places for some very key reasons. If we move on to the key reason, that is uh, resource finding. There was lack of knowledge about reusing the resources. Today if we talk about agriculture, we talk about the crop cycles, like how many crops do you grow in the whole year, and mostly you find that on the fertile lands there are more than one crops that gives a sustainable mode of livelihood, but it was not there in those days. So what used to happen is that people used to use the land of one particular area. When it's gone, they used to travel to other places. That means the whole settlement needs to be moved. But this time this river valleys gave the opportunity to the people to stay in a single land. That gives rise to first the villages, next they move on to the cities. There is no difference between village and city, only in the mode of livelihood in those days. In villages there were only a very limited number of livelihood ways, but in cities it is getting diversified. So there are another reason, disaster like floods, like droughts, etc., that also forced the people to move from one place to another. And there is also the reason of adventure also. So, and there is another important reason just below, I couldn't see here, is that there is an art to conquer the lands of the foreign lands. So that is an important. So there are these five key reasons. So one thing is very important, that is resource development, resource management, the sense of settlement, urbanization, and development of new ways of livelihood. So if we move on to the next page, so resources to know about the past. In this particular page there are three mentioned. One is about manuscript, one is about inscription, and one is bones of the animals, birds, and fish. So what are the manuscripts? Manu in Latin means hand. So whatever written with a hand in a form of script is known as a manuscript. So what were the different subjects? Now why is it important to know subjects? Because if we know about the subjects, we will definitely know about the diversification of the ways, the means of livelihood. Religion was an issue, medicines was an issue, kings was an issue, epics, poems, plays, and uh, manuscripts were generally written on palm leaves. So we already are observing a different class of people. People who are making the religion an issue, people who are interested in medicines, kings who used to protect the people from different adversaries. Then there are some forms of entertainment like epics, poems, and plays also. So in this particular thing, manuscript, we used to know about the different ways of living a life, the different means of livelihood, the diversification of livelihood. Now next we move on to the inscription. Now from manuscript to inscription there is a transformation which also gives means huge interest on preservation. Manuscripts were used to written on palm leaves which were not going to last very long, but inscriptions were written on stones earlier, because they used to be considered as very important. And what were the contents of inscription? Definitely what needs to stay for longer, that is the king's order and the people's did. What the people used to do, things like the great victories in some great battles, the law and order. So can we find the transformation in the mode of record keeping? Yes, there is a transformation towards a stable society and towards keeping a stable and preserved record. Bones of animals, birds, and fishes give us the idea about the eating habit of the people. So why don't we use, means if we only collect the bones of animal, birds, and fish, then definitely were the people only non vegetarians? No, definitely there were some vegetarians, there was some vegetarian diet also. But since the uh, chances of the plant survival is very low for such a long period of time, so animals, birds and fishes were the most important one rather than the plant resources. Now, there the question I was talking about, the plural form of past, many pasts. So why is it a plural form? Because when we talk about the past, we talk about the people, we talk about the diversification of the livelihood. So since there is a word of diversification of the livelihood, that means there were different classes of people, different ways of forming a society, different cultures. So what was diversification, means where was this diversification observed the most? In the classes of the people, the means of livelihoods, the practices and the customs, and the geographical challenges, geographical locations they were situated in. So these things are to remember: classes of the people, that means what are they doing, and where in the society, the societal hierarchy they are staying, like the kings are the top, the farmers are not at the top, in this way. So if we take an example, now this is important, the geographical location, there is also diversification. People from resource scarce areas are more self dependent with respect to the people from the resourceful areas. Why? Due to geographical compulsion. In the book, there is an example of Andaman is given. Is the people from the Andaman used to produce their own food, and that is because Andaman is an island. So whatever resources are available there, you must reuse it. So self dependence is the key there for the survival. Now some key time periods are given. 8,000 years ago the agriculture start. 4,007 years ago cities developed where Indus river tributaries. 2005 years ago cities in the Ganga valley. So this is all about the first chapter. Let's move on to the questions. There is an important question: why do you think ordinary people do not keep records? So there is a very easy way to answer this, like because they are ordinary people, they are not doing some extraordinary things, that's why it's not important to keep records. But that is not the diplomatic way. Rather, you should write, they are not at the helm, therefore keeping records for them is an extravagant idea, because they are not going to say something important, do something important, and in the societal hierarchy they are not so important that time. They are not accountable to a great extent. Now because they were not responsible for the protection of the people, they were not accountable. Since they were not accountable, there is no point in record keeping on day to day basis. They were not educated enough. This is a very important point. Educations until the modern times were used to be for the elitists. So education for the farmer in those time, I don't know what more impossible dream is there other than this. Even UPSC is crackable. So they were not providing laws like in the first point I've already told. Like if we read the preamble of our constitution, we the people are giving the constitution to ourselves to govern ourselves. But in those days the idea of a democracy was not there. There was kingship, there was queenship later. So people were not important, so they don't need to write the laws for themselves. So there is no need for daily record keeping. So that's the various reasons that ordinary people do not keep records. Now there is also some matching, like the Narmada Valley hunting and gathering. Oldest time, the Magadha was the first big kingdom. Garo Hills for the early agriculture, and Indus and its tributaries are known for the earlier cities. Now, what are the different archaeological objects? That is the archaeological sources. Simply the records from which we can find the knowledge about the past. The remains of the structures, buildings, the paintings, the culture, tools and weapons. Tools are used to do certain things, weapons are used for self defense, pots, ornaments, coins, and bones of animals and fish. Now, these pots, ornaments, and coins, these are important for economy. tools and weapons, this is important for defense. Painting and culture, this is important for art and culture. Remains of structure, important for infrastructure. And bones of birds, animals and fish gives you the idea about their food habits. So this is how you need to look at the things. It is not just some points. Let's go deep into it. What are they talking about? They are giving the ideas about the infrastructure, living standards, eating habits. They are giving the ideas about the people, the ornaments who are using it, what classes are means enjoying the most important privileges, and the defense system was there, how means advanced was it by that time. So this is the important keywords you need to remember. Now there is an important question, difference between the lives of kings and farmers. I don't know that there is a big problem regarding means to get some idea about it, but what to write when you are writing an answer. So farmers, they were the producers of the resource, and kings, they were the managers of the resources. So duties were different. While farmers need to maximize their production, the kings were important for two aspects. First of all, they need to make sure that farmers are producing more, and at the same time, they also need to keep in mind that they need to protect those crops, protect those producers. Okay. So besides, the kings have different duties like protecting the citizens from different types of adversaries. So if we go through the first chapter, if we talk about the classes, even if it is not mentioned distinctly in the chapter, we differently find four classes. Actually, it's five classes, I think, on a funny side. The kings, the army or the soldiers, the farmers, the writers, and the poets. And what is the important fifth? It's the UPSC aspirants. So let's enjoy. We will move on to the next chapter in some future lecture. Thank you.